Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Twisted Podcast after about 3 years. On today's episode, it's just me, ISAA, and I'm going to be talking about pretty much everything to do with the podcast itself. Why have I been gone for this long, and why am I back? And what's the plan moving forward? As well as talking about what are my plans for music, and what am I working on at the moment. And finally, to close this first episode, I'm talking about surveillance and whether or not you are being watched, alongside with what a possible future could hold for us with brain chips and the ability to read each other's minds. If you've enjoyed this episode, give it a rating and stay tuned for more episodes to come and more guests to come. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Twisted Podcast. I'm your host, ISAA. And, well, now it's ISAA. But back when we did it originally, ISAA was not a thing yet, right? So it's been quite a substantial amount of time since the last episode of the Twisted Podcast, which came out in approximately, I think, 2020, which would be about 4 years ago. And a lot has changed. So this particular episode, I just want to come in and talk about a couple of things, talk about the future, talk about what are my plans at the moment, as well as the main topic of today, which is surveillance, which is people watching us, people watching you in particular. And for this episode, I'll be sitting here alone talking to you, but maybe in the future, well, hopefully in the future, we'll have some more guests coming on. So exciting stuff. First and foremost, I mean, where have I been? Right? That's the question. I started this thing many years ago. Again, I filmed a couple of episodes mainly with many of my friends, and we were reviewing movies. That's one thing we were doing. We were talking about influencer boxing when it originally became, I suppose, when it originally started in some way, and talked about a lot of comic book stuff, a lot of movies, TV shows, video games, and everything in between. And so things kind of took a bit of a turn with the podcast, especially near the end of it, because I was uploading videos or uploading podcasts probably about once a month. And the most recent episode, which I believe is still out, Slav Talks, or Slav Aristocrat Talks, with me, Vitaly, Chris, and Connor was there as well. So we need to get the gang back together, that's for sure, in a proper studio, because the last time we did that was in Chris's shed, I think. So I don't know. It was a fun experience, and this time we're coming back strong 4 years later, and I'm gonna continue sitting here and talking about a bunch of nonsense or a bunch of things that interest me, but this time I'm gonna take it a bit more seriously. I'm gonna connect it with my brand, the whole music situation, and I'm gonna try and package it all together. What's coming is a website is coming, a proper website. I know I have one at the moment, but it's not like anything ever really happens there. So a website is coming more interesting podcasts are coming with guests, with proper guests who are, again, probably quite profound in certain areas of life, which maybe are not so obvious to me. Again, ones that are obvious to me, I will also be discussing, mainly music, psychology, philosophy, movies, and things like that. So all of those things I hopefully will continue to discuss. Today, we're talking about you. We're talking about me. We're talking about everyone who lives in this crazy world of media. And we will talk about that rather soon. For the music, what's next for ISAA? Why has he been gone? I uploaded a song, Backseat, about a month ago. I believe it released about a month ago, maybe 2 months ago. And ever since then, it's been rather quiet. I've been busy working on my bachelor's thesis, which probably I will talk about in a future episode, which is heavily inspired by Huberman's podcast. Andrew Huberman, neuroscientist, professor at Stanford University, where he did an episode talking about music and the impact, the psychological and cognitive impact of music on the brain. And so a lot of what I will be talking about will be taken from his podcast and things that he has mentioned, as well as some of my own, because I've specified it to study and exercise for teenagers. So in any ways, I'm working on that, and I will talk about that probably in a future episode. Maybe if I can get a guest on as well to discuss this particular topic with me, it would be very interesting. So, many different things in the works, and I miss this. I miss the podcast. I miss sitting here and, recording in front of the microphone and talking in front of the microphone, and that sort of gets a part of me going, because it's much like recording music, except instead of rapping lyrics, I'm waffling about certain random ass topics. So, nothing changes in that regard. In terms of the music, in terms of ISAA, in terms of me, I got some things in the works. Just because I haven't uploaded anything particular in the last month or two doesn't mean that I'm completely finished. A matter of fact, I'm taking a step back and I'm trying to look at the bigger picture. I'm trying to look at where do I want to go specifically. And a lot of things may change with that. I'm currently working on a featured song, which actually I've already made one featured song, but it hasn't released yet. I'm sure I will let you know when that happens over on Instagram, if you're not following me yet, the one ISAA on Instagram. And I'm working on another one, which is a very interesting concept, a very different take to some of my music. I'm going to be taking the role of Satan himself, and the song is called Work of the Devil, I believe. It is at the moment called Work of the Devil. And so I'm taking the role of Satan himself and talking about injustice and why things happen, why rage is a necessary component for order. And that's a whole another topic, right? Yin and yang, order and chaos. But that's what's happening right now. And I'm pretty excited about that project. I think I will perform pretty well on it. But what I'm really more excited for is a song that I'm working on. Probably my next solo song that comes out. Hopefully, maybe. I'm not sure. I have some things in the backlog that I might release if this takes too long. But it's a song about society in a darker light. And it's, bar for bar. Really, I'm not sure exactly how to describe it, but it's a very bar for bar, maybe even a little bit underground type rap. And I'm just super excited about it because I genuinely think this is some of the best lyrics that I have written to this day. And that I'm happy about. So I'm working on that. Definitely. Definitely. I suppose that an album is not something that I'm working on at the moment. Again, just taking a step back, looking at the bigger picture. In terms of beats, I have decided to really invest a lot of my finances into external factors such as marketing, such as maybe actually producing quality within the song to a certain degree. But again, I need to figure that stuff out because I want to start creating beats on my own. I know it's gonna take time. I know that originally, back at the most recent video of the podcast, I mentioned that I won't be going into beat making because I'm splitting my focuses, and I want you to think about that for a second as well while we're talking. Splitting your focuses. How many things are you focusing on? Because if you're only focusing on one particular thing, you can improve so much on this one particular thing. So for me, that was rapping. I would focus on rapping and only rapping. And not beat making, because then I would split my focus and ultimately decline within the, let's say, section of rap within my songs. But overall, I think, now, when I thought of this originally, I thought that wasn't a good choice to make. Now my perspective has changed a little bit because I see development, I see growth, and possibly I even see profit. Let's move on to the more pressing topic, which is in this case surveillance, and specifically surveillance of us by possibly a higher power. No, I don't want to call it a higher power per se, but I'm talking about governments. I'm talking about any sort of agencies, really. And a lot of this might just come from the United States, but we could probably say the very same about any other country. Either the country that you live in, the country that I live in, doesn't matter. And surveillance is a very interesting topic because the question is, do you feel safe? Right? I mean, do any of us really feel safe, especially with our information? I don't know. I mean, we all just go ahead and accept terms and conditions, right? From time to time. Pretty much every single one that pops up, just accepting it blindly. Now, I'm not saying that we should go and read these terms and conditions, right? Because that would be insane. What are some of these businesses really doing with our info? I mean, I don't know. Have you ever had a situation where you're talking about something and all of a sudden, bang, advertisement, bang, another advertisement, products, calls, sales, etc., etc.? I mean, it happens, I would like to say, more than I would like it to. Let's put it like that. It happens actually quite a lot, the more that you think about it. Now, that's a bit of a Mandela effect, I suppose. If you're really watching out for it, you will start to note some of the possible changes in your environment. However, we can go a step further and I can ask you, have you ever thought about something and it popped up? Like, not even said with words, but thought in your mind, and it gets popped up to you immediately. Now, that can be chance, because it has happened to me. It's happened to me probably about 2 weeks ago, where I was thinking about Googling something, and it was something so specific and something that I would never Google for, and it started with, like, how, I think. Just the word how. And as soon as I typed that, I just saw exactly what I was looking for in the recommended section, And this was a specific niche that I just wouldn't normally Google for. Like I just would not. That freaked me out a little bit, right? Because like, what's going on here? All right, where are the cameras? Who's playing the prank? Right? Okay, funny. No, but I don't know. Maybe I'm the only one that's had this particular scenario. Maybe it's just crazy coincidence, which I doubt it is, because I don't believe in coincidence. And that's not necessarily leading into a huge conspiracy theory with brain chips and things like that, and vaccines. Although, you can't rule that out completely, can you? Nevertheless, the whole brain chip situation is quite interesting. Neuralink, being able to well, so far from what I've seen, is quite successful, especially when it comes to testing people. There's been a confirmation of Neuralink working on a man who was paralyzed from the shoulders downwards, and he was able to play chess with his mind on a laptop. So ultimately, actually moving the cursor and controlling the cursor on the laptop with his brain. Now, I gotta admit that this surprised me at first when I saw it, but it's not an entirely new invention for us. I mean, this was actually possible, I believe, multiple years ago. So it's not crazy. It's not a crazy new thing. However, this is legitimately just the beginning of what I believe Musk and his company are able to do, which is quite exciting. So, he was talking about, don't exactly quote me on this, but it was something about telepathy being possible within the next 10 years, which means we'll have to communicate without communicating, if that makes sense. No, just basically reading each other's minds and speaking to each other with our minds. Some of that Jean Grey action, some of that Baldur's Gate, Mind Flayer, Tadpole action. I'm not sure that's something I'm looking forward to, and I don't know if you're looking forward to. I don't know if most of us are looking forward to. Probably not, if I had to guess. It's crazy, right? It's crazy. But to be able to cure blindness as well, which is another thing that Musk mentioned, piques my interest. And it doesn't pique my interest for the reason of other people, but it piques my interest because that means I get to stare at as many screens as I want, and I don't have to worry about my eyes failing. Of course, helping the people is also great. Don't get me wrong, right? We're helping blind people. I'm kidding, of course. That's absolutely incredible. The fact that we can help people that are paralyzed, which has already been done, helping men, women walk while they're paralyzed. However, I've only seen footage of men, but I assume it works on women as well. So creating new nerve connections with the chip, being able to move your legs with the chip, and also being able to move your legs without the chip because of these newly established neural connections, which I think is the big one. Because what if we can create, I don't know, chips that let us see better, let's say, or hear better? Basically, augmentations. Does that possibly create new neural connections that we have never seen before so far? I mean, I don't know where this leads. And it leads kind of into a cyberpunk-esque world. Which, I mean, if any of you have played Cyberpunk, you do not want to be in that world. I mean, hey, it looks cool. Night City looks awesome. I mean, it's basically just like a futuristic version of New York, but it's not a future that I'm entirely waiting for, unless we're talking about simulations also. But we're going way out of the ballpark here, which is surveillance and people watching us and people making sure that we're doing everything we are meant to be doing. I don't want to sound like a conspiracy theorist, but what happens when someone hacks your brain? I mean, and even especially with this curing blindness stuff, like, what is real? Is what you're seeing actually what you're seeing? Is it actually there? Because you could project anything without actually having a chance at confirming this particular sight that you're having, assuming that you are, in this case, the blind person. How do you confirm that? Right? I mean, it's a very, very interesting set of, let's say, ideas, which brings around a very, very interesting set of questions. So that's definitely something to look forward to, I suppose, if you want to take surveillance to the next level. Furthermore, if we were to assume that, government agencies have the power to basically watch us whenever they want, which I believe you could make the argument that they are. In America, there was something called the Patriot Act after 9/11, which pretty much raised the question about giving up your privacy for the sake of preventing terrorist attacks. Now, the whole idea behind it was that if you were to give up your privacy, the government would be able to access your cameras, access pretty much every single piece of data on you, on your computers, on your phones, on your devices, without the need to ask your permission. So now, companies like Apple denied these accusations. They said that we do not have a entry point open in our devices where the government could technically go inside and watch you in your house through the camera. I'm not entirely sure, but I believe those allegations. I'm not entirely sure, but these claims from Apple have sort of taken a backpedal to the conclusion that, well, yes, there is something in your phone. There is some sort of open gate for the government or higher authorities to come in and pretty much access parts of the device. And the question is whether this is ethical or not, right? I mean, within the Patriot Act, as far as I'm concerned, people could just straight up refuse this, right? And the thing that made the Patriot Act so important to look at is because they would be able to use this in court. So things that they found on you, things that they have seen probably through the camera, are materials that they can then reuse in court against you or against other people. If you said no, if you denied this Patriot Act, which we can assume that they still have this ability to go into your cameras, your devices, and anything they would like, with the exception being they cannot use it in court. It's not like you would ever know anyways, right? I mean, how can you prove that the government is in your phone? How can you prove that they're watching you through your camera right now? You can't. There was no way. And so does it really matter if they're able to use it in court or not? Yes, from a legal point of view, it does. But from a privacy point of view, a point of view of a regular citizen that just enjoys having privacy, I mean, does that really matter then? There's another thing that comes into question with surveillance, which is, to what extent are we surveilled? Is it possible to go rogue? Because if you've watched a certain amount of movies, you'd probably be familiar with characters going rogue and, quote, off the grid. So, is it possible at this point to go off the grid? Well, of course it is. For people with the sufficient amount of resources, it is, yes. But for a regular person, well, a company or agency, I can't remember the name, which hired, quotes unquote, hired, I guess, someone to go rogue. And they would like to see if they could find this particular person. Now, this guy went off on some island, new IDs, new identities, new everything, no phone, no computers, no nothing, right? He just went on some random tropical island and enjoyed his life there, probably drank some tequilas and had a good time, to put it the least. But they found him, obviously, not through cameras, because there was no cameras in this place. Not through his ID, not through his appearance, not through him getting a phone or posting something on the media. They found him through the way which he types on the keyboard. So let me say that again for you. Through the way that he types on his keyboard. Now, I don't know exactly how that works. I mean, I can assume and I can speculate. But I think I type rather normally on the keyboard, right? I would say many of you have probably the same claim. We all probably do it at slightly different speeds, but I'm sure there's a lot of people that also type on relatively the same speed. And so what is it? What's going on, right? Finding people through how they type on the keyboard? That's intense stuff. Now, that's not exactly surveillance. We're going into a bit of, let's say, tracking at this point. But it's still a way of surveillance, because we can assume that part of your information is this exact way on how you type on the keyboard. So, wow, they really got everything on you, right? And that's not even getting started on Facebook, which approximately after 48 hours following the creation of your Facebook account, Facebook knows more about you than anyone ever will. Your partner, your mother, father, doesn't matter. They know everything. So yeah, it was somewhere between 48 hours and 2 weeks that they would know absolutely everything. But I think it was 48 hours. And I would love to get someone on the podcast actually speak more in depth about this topic, or speak with someone about this topic. But for now, I just wanted to slowly, roughly get into it and talk about some of my thoughts. So this is the Twisted Podcast. We're back after 3 or 4 years. It's been a crazy journey, and I'm really excited to start this journey with the Twisted Podcast. I am going to be bringing on guests, and these episodes, I hope for them to come out weekly, or if I get some incredible blessing of hard work during the week, possibly more than once a week. I'm excited. I'm looking forward to it. I hope you are too. I thank you for listening, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. See you next time.